Okay, it's Dave from Driving Venture, and today it's something very, very different. I've got my good friend Myles Newhouse with me today. We're going to talk a little bit about that fabulous 4.0 997 RS I had the privilege of driving just a few weeks ago. Then we're going to talk a little bit about Myles' other car that he has, or the cars he's owned, cars he'd like to own, and then we're going to get into a little bit about the car market today, what's happening with cars. So something a little bit different, and hopefully you'll get something out of it. So without further ado, welcome Myles Newhouse to Driving Venture.
David Hester of Driving Venture.
That's me, yeah. So tell us about the 4-litre Myles. Obviously a car you've known about, everyone's known about that car for years, and then tell us about the story. How did it come off?
I met the guy that owned the car probably 4 or 5 years ago through a good friend of mine, local neighbour. Met the guy, lovely chap who owned it. He'd bought it from Bristol Porsche, where the car was actually for sale. It went on retail sale on piston heads, instantly saw it, bought it immediately, gave £167,000 for it.
So much margin then, really?
So I think list price at the time was maybe 127, 130,000. Yeah. So, you know, Mr. Harris had a drink, the dealership had a drink, everyone was happy, car was gone back through the network, which is what Porsche dealers like. You know, they always like the car to go back. Then I think the customer is then not thought of as a flipper.
The flippers.
So, chap bought the car. Unfortunately, he put it away back in 2013, put it in a storage facility down south. And the car was kept there until earlier on this year, when I was lucky enough to buy it. I'd approached the gentleman, or friend really, a couple of years ago, showed my interest in the car, said if you're ever selling it, I'd like first option. He said, yeah, no, you know, usual guys banter. We'd met up a few times over a few beers. We'd met on a driving tour up in Scotland, showed my interest. I was in another lovely car I have still got, and he said if I'm ever selling it, I'll give you first option. So we were at the front of the queue really. The car unfortunately then materialised at JZM, JZM Porsche car, and it was advertised at strong money.
Very strong, yeah.
So when he approached me probably 18 months ago, he gave me a figure that I'd buy the car, and being a car dealer, I obviously bid him less because
that's the game.
That's the game, the deal maker. So we sort of parted company on friendly basis, and I was still seen as in the forefront, but unfortunately it was advertised. Fast forward to March this year. Out of the blue, I got a phone call on a Saturday afternoon. I was working away on the farm. I got a phone call from the chap that owned the car, and said, I want to sell my car, of which, okay, I'm very interested. What will you take for it? Usual backwards and forwards phone calls, of which he asked me to bid at it. So being that we were deep in lockdown, a little bit worrying times, we don't know where we're going, I bid him what I thought was a fair price. And I gave him a time element of during the weekend, and fortunately for myself, he rang me back and said, yes, I'll accept your offer. I paid him for it immediately and collected the car from JZM storage facility a good week or so later. And the story then unfolds. I now have the car. I love it. It's probably one of the best cars I've ever owned. It's a car I've wanted to own for a long, long time. Maybe not just that car, but one of those cars. The holy grail of 911s.
The holy grail, yeah. So when it was put for sale with JZM, I think the market was perfect for someone that wanted a deal, because the demand is sort of tailing off, I guess, and the market wasn't really buoyant, shall we say, for the overs prices.
I think if it was a 991 generation 1 or 2 car, the marketplace has died off a little. And that those cars that are not necessarily in abundance but are available, I feel that marketplace has started to subside a little.
Yeah, it has definitely.
The 4-litre market, being that there's only a certain very small number of cars, I don't know what the exact number is. Some people say it's 26, some people say it's 30, some people say it's early 30s, whatever. But whatever it may be, that marketplace, I feel, will always be, because that car is renowned as the Holy Grail car, will always be up there with the other prestigious cars that Porsche produce. You know, your Carrera GT, your 918. Obviously different price range, but I still think it's going to command a very strong over list price.
Certainly, yeah, certainly. And I think the beauty of that car was, as I said in my video, was that it actually had been used, because we have seen them, like you rightly say, that so few come up for sale, that when this one came up for sale, it wasn't competing with very many others, but it had at least been driven, so that was reflected in its value. I mean, what do you think about this, like, 475 for a car with 200 miles on the clock?
Well,
I mean, what do you think about that?
strangely, there's actually 2 cars on the market at the moment, both of the same mileage, both of the, I presume both at the same price. One is one's got at Romans at 475. That's got 285 miles on the clock. That has, I think, got fixed bucket seats in it. And then there's another one gone on the market at Jonathan Franklin's. Again, a very reputable dealer. Same mileage, but that has folding buckets in it. Right. Now, for me, I would prefer the folding buckets. They're a bit more comfortable. I've got a...
You certainly grip the game when I was driving it.
Well, you know, I'm probably as rotund as you are. And I find that those seats are very figure-hugging when you've got, you know, a fat arse like myself.
When you're carrying a bit.
When you're carrying a bit of timber, and this stuff doesn't help.
No.
The car had done 2,800 miles when I bought it, but unfortunately, I'm a typical lad with love driving, etc. Very fortunate to have had some very, very beautiful cars, and I couldn't be more ashamed than to say I've never used that vehicle. And I've actually doubled the mileage on that car. You know, I've done just under 6,000 miles in it now. I've loved every mile. It's so engaging. I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about what the car drives like. But, you know, it's just, you feel that you're on a roller skate.
Exactly.
Well, you've driven it, so you know.
So what about Scotland? How did you like Scotland? That's his first major real outing. I know you did Wales as a supercar driver, but you did Highlands with us. I mean, the roads. I mean, what about that experience? It must have been absolutely
So
amazing.
rewind back to the supercar driver trip in Wales. You know, great friends, you included. We had a great trip out, couple of days. The weather was atrocious. Second day was atrocious. But, you know, engaging car. I found the car very difficult to drive because I'm used to a PDK car or an automatic car. So to drive a manual car where you're actually winding back to your early 20s or whatever it was when you were in your 205 GT.
You had a manual before that car. When was the last time you had a manual car? Quite way back.
Well, being a dealer, I suppose I'm in and out of manuals all the time. But to actually say I have a manual car as my everyday car, you're probably looking backwards of 10 years.
It's like when I got the Spider. It was like revelation, back in time. It felt so good.
Well, it's strange, isn't it? I mean, you know, as much as a PDK car or an automatic car is a lazy man's car to drive, you're actually having to fight with the cars that we're fortunate enough to drive. You know, an automatic 500 horsepower car, you really have to hang on for dear life and drive it very, very well. So, you know, putting that sort of horsepower in a manual car, you've got to be really about your wits or have your wits about you, because you can soon get it so wrong.
It has got the traction control, it has got the stability control, there are the safety features in the car. But when I was driving it, the word that came across in the video, I think I said it, was that it's very raw. It's a very raw experience, because we're in 2010-11 technology. You know, we've gone almost 10 years now in terms of what cars, you know, feel like on the road. And I think we've lost that rawness. What would you say about that? I mean, I think that's...
I do think you're right. So we've talked about Wales and how engaging it was, and, you know, having a good day of weather and a bad day of weather. Fast forward to your trip to Drive Adventure trip round Scotland, which I've got to say will be memorable forever because of many different things.
Watch that video as well.
But so driving that car on those roads, there's probably nothing better. When you say raw, I think the raw element is that you're actually, if you make a mistake,
You'll be paying for it, perhaps.
You're paying for it forever. Whereas if you're driving a more recent car with up-to-date traction control, PDK gearbox, you've got two hands on the wheel constantly because you don't have to change gear. You know, you're only using one leg, you're probably more concentrated, you're probably more focused, and it isn't as raw. I feel that you can make a mistake and the car will help you. With that car, I feel that you have to be on the edge all the time. I don't mean be illegal with your driving, but I mean that you have to be more aware of what's going on around you.
No, I mean, I think the tyres, you put the new Cup 2 tyres on after the trip to Wales. I had a bit of misfortune with one of the tyres getting a flat, getting a puncture. But I think the new Cup 2 tyre is certainly, when I was driving the car, there was a bit of dampness about, but a bit of rain later in the day. But it felt very assured on the road. I mean, I didn't feel it was like too skittish, should we say. It felt good.
Those tyres are incredible. They really are. I mean, no matter what you're driving, it holds you on the road. I'm sure that if the weather was, you know, more leaves on the road, a lot wetter, etc., you're going to have problems. But I do feel that those tyres help you out so much.
Well, so don't forget to watch that video, the Driving Venture Tour of the Highlands. It was so memorable. It was a birthday weekend. I'll never forget it, and it was absolutely fabulous. So let's talk about, you've got another car in the collection at the moment, a Guards Red car. Tell us about that one then. This is very, very, again, quite a rare car really. Not 600 ever made, but from UK supply, we're probably talking maybe 60, 70 cars. I mean, again, not a lot of them around in right-hand drive.
No, you are right. I was very fortunate enough to get a GT2 RS through Porsche Kendall, who is
Our dealer.
our preferred dealer, family-based company. You know, support them through and through, service work, parts, everything that they do is fabulous. And, you know, from the MD or chairman or down to the valeter, they're all fabulous lads and girls.
Well, 60 years of selling Porsche, I mean, they must know what they're doing.
Well, they must do. And, you know, I was very fortunate to get a car. I've probably done as many miles in that car than anybody else has done in a GT2 RS.
Well, I don't think, I mean, I know you've done, I think it must be 10,000?
No, it's actually, it's probably close to 15 now. 15, yeah. But, you know, every single mile I've done in that car has been fabulous. I mean, I've had some fabulous European trips with Supercar Driver. I've had some great trips with yourself. And it's a great car that whoever sees that car loves it. You know, whether you pull up at a pub or you pull up outside, you know, a park or whatever, everyone wants to look at the car, which is great. And of course, everyone's allowed to look at it. And it's been fabulous that Parker and Parker, or our preferred Porsche dealer, has been able to use it as a advertising tool as well, which is, you know, everyone wins, which is fabulous.
So how would you compare the two cars? I mean, you've got two fabulous cars in the mix. How would you compare the two?
Complete chalk and cheese. You've got 700 horsepower, automatic vehicle, absolutely blows your socks off. The drive of that car is epic. The speed, the way it eats miles is just amazing, and it's comfortable.
It's a great car to drive all the way to Europe in, isn't it?
It is, and I've done it a few times. And my son and I would go, you know, we've been on all these different trips, and it's fabulous. And everybody that you go with, they're all great guys. You have a great laugh. Doesn't matter who's got the slowest car, fastest car, whatever it might be. But that car is just amazing, and I can't thank them enough for allowing me to have it. You park the red car up, you get back into the white car, and it's just a different style of drive, completely different feel. You're more engaged. You're more aware of what's going around you. You need to make sure you're in the right gear. You need to turn in earlier because the steering is a lot quicker, and it's completely different the way you drive that car. You know, we have a great friend Martin who's got a 3.8. You know, amazing car, absolutely epic to drive, and the steering on my car, I find that is very similar to his. It might have a little bit more grunt with the engine, but you know, is it the be all and end all? But then when you drive the 4 litre, it just makes you aware of how good that car is. And the video that we've watched recently of the launching of the new GT3 or whatever Chris Harris was able to pull the sheet back and show us, you know, Pruninger said that car was a cup car for the road, and it really is. It's so different to everything else we drive.
Yeah, cool. So tell us about some of the other cars you've been fortunate enough to own. There was a very famous silver car that another YouTuber and influencer did drive from. It was once at Redline
Yes.
in his early days. Tell us about that car.
So if we wind time back, I bought, embarrassingly, a Carrera GT and a right-hand drive GT2 RS, and for the pair, I gave £550,000.
Ooh, steady on.
So, but at the time, that's what cars were worth. That's what the pair of cars were worth. They were both UK cars. I sold the GT2 RS2, which had done 17,000 miles. I sold it to Porsche Newcastle and thought I'd swum the channel. That must have been in 2014, and they gave £230,000 for that car, which, looking back now, is probably half of what it's worth now. The Carrera GT, that came in the package. I had that car for probably 3 years, and I only did maybe 1,500 miles in that car.
Do you wish you'd driven it more?
Yes. But a lot bigger car for the road. You know, it filled the lane that you were driving in. The sound of the engine is just epic. The drivability of the car is amazing, but every time you got to a junction, you put it in first gear and you were petrified of letting the clutch out, because if you gave it any acceleration whatsoever, it disconnected the anti-stall. So if you touch your accelerator, anti-stall came off, you drop your clutch, you'd stall. Right. And of course, everybody pointed the finger, he can't drive. So anyway, that one unfortunately passed through my hands. I then bought another one. I actually took one in part exchange against a 918 Spider I had. Wasn't as good a car. That did go to Redline Racing, and then it was sold from there. But amazing car. I would love another one. That is my goal.
The prices have seemed to have moved up the hundreds and hundreds of thousands. I mean, what, 600 now, maybe even 7. I mean, they're going for crazy money now.
They are talking over £600,000 for them now, depending on if they're from European spec cars or if they're from American spec cars. And there is a difference between the two. American spec cars or American supplied vehicles seem to be a good 15.
They're all left-hand drive, aren't they?
They're all left-hand drive. There was 1,260 sold. They've all got a plaque in the car with an individual number, and there's a lot less came to Europe than there were to America. But the European cars seem to command.
For the European market,
they seem to command.
American one, for some reason. Yeah, I mean, again, GT Silver, that's where it all began with the GT Carrera. Show you is it the Carrera GT? Carrera GT, yeah.
Fabulous car.
So, what cars would you like to own then? If you could sort of think ahead a little bit, cars that might be coming up or cars that are currently in the market, would you like to own? What would you say?
I have to admit, I would like another Carrera GT. I really would. I think that they're that good of a car. I do feel that in a few years' time, if you could fast forward, I think that they will still command a good, strong value. Other cars I'd like to own, I've actually ordered one of the new little Yaris GRs because everyone else has ordered one.
We'll review that car when he gets it.
But that car will be I'm not suggesting that £34,000 is cheap. No. But if you can have the experience of a track day car for £34,000 and enjoy it and use it on the road as a daily car, I think there's a lot of sense in that vehicle. Other cars I'd like to own, obviously the new GT product that's coming with Porsche. I'm looking forward to that. I'd like to. After driving one of our good friends' Taycans, I think that's a very good, wise car to own. Although at the moment, for me, I'm just out of that marketplace at the moment. Yeah,
I think electrification. It's kind of like the death nail for all those exciting these cars that have been produced with the emotion, the sound, the feel. It's the future. But I think if you can get and own the 4-litre, a nice GT
you are correcting. You are correcting what you're saying, but I suppose the halo cars that we talk about. So in 2030, when we all have to go electric, or all new cars have to be electric, how do you feel that? Sorry to put the shoe back on the other foot, but how would you feel What is going to happen to the Ferrari owner that's got a fabulous collection of Ferraris? What is he going to do with his special collection of cars?
Well, I think there's still going to be petrol stations, and I think there's still going to be petrol supply. That demand's going to tail off as move more into the 2040s and so on. So I think there's going to be lots of demand for these cars still. I think there will be demand, but the petrol's still going to be there. They're still going to be able to be driven. I mean, they can't take them off the road, surely not. I mean, I can't believe that would happen.
You're a fabulously wealthy chap. You've been out and you've paid £1 million for an F40 and, I'm guessing, £2 million for an Enzo.
Yeah.
So in your garage you have an F40 and an Enzo. When petrol finishes, or the supply of the supply of petrol engine vehicles new, so we're going to look for 20, 30 years after that. But surely these cars can then not become completely worthless. These cars surely must have a value.
I think we're going to see from 2030 onwards a spike, because I think petrol will have to be supplied, because you can't say to people you can't buy a solely petrol car or diesel car anymore. But you have to buy an fully electric car. But we can't take people off the road because they've still got a petrol car. I mean, buying a car, it's not cheap. Even if you're buying a 15 grand car, for some people, that's a lot of money. So they'll have to still be driving.
If you're buying a £2,000 or a £1,000 car, so from £1,000 to £50 million, all cars are expensive in different worlds.
Exactly.
But I can't see the electrification of cars coming in 2030 immediately. They can't, because there's that's a story that we can talk about some other time.
So let's finish off then with a little bit of a talk around the car market. Now, one of the things that upsets lots of people when it comes to Porsche product, particularly the GT product, is this market where people get them and they end up on the secondary market quite quickly, 20, 30, 40,000 pounds over list price. That seems to be dying away. What's your thoughts about that, the current market today, in terms of, that's it, the bubble's popped, but what's your thoughts about that?
To put it in layman's terms, I don't think the bubble has popped. I still think there is a need for GT product.
Absolutely.
I feel that the way that Porsche and the dealers supply the marketplace is very clever. I think they do it much better than other marques.
Yeah.
We've seen Ferrari saying to their customers, you need to buy X, Y, and Z in order to get A, B, and C.
Yeah.
And the losses on X, Y, and Z have been that phenomenal that A, B, and C have then been that highly priced that they can't get out.
No, they can't.
That marketplace has slowed down. Porsche dealers are, I would suggest, not as bad. I still think you need to be in a position where you have to buy a family car, maybe a four-wheel drive, maybe a two-seat sport car, maybe a fully electric Taycan, your hybrid Cayenne, Panamera, whatever that may be. And I still think you have to become part of the brand
You have to be
in order, correct, a proper customer, in order that then you are rewarded by not necessarily a GT3, but maybe a Spider or a GT4 or the new 4-litre GTS that you've just road tested.
Incredible.
Which, you know,
For the money, really.
do you really need a GT4 or a Spider when you could have a GTS Boxster and a GTS Cayman? You know, just as good, and as mere mortals that drive on the road, can you get any more speed out of them? I just think that the Porsche dealers will still have the necessity to look out for those customers that are going to flip those cars, because there still will be many amongst us that will want to buy that car in order to make X thousand pounds. It will be the next big thing. The new GT3, as you know, Mr. Harris,
Blue's coming.
in sharp blue, you know, and there will be people desperately clamouring to buy those cars. And unfortunately, someone will have bought a Panamera and a Cayenne for the wife, etc., and they will get one of these cars that they'll flip on to make the £15,000-20,000.
It's very difficult to sort of weed out, if you will, the enthusiast, because obviously a GT car is designed for a specific purpose, to do a specific job. And I take your point about obviously being a customer and being able to be, you know, have a relationship with a dealer, but getting the car to someone who's going to sit in it, who's going to actually use it for its intended purpose. It's very, very difficult.
I honestly feel, and I know I'm going to sound like an imbecile now, which I do many, many times. I actually think that these dealers should say to a customer, I want you to bring your car back after 6 months, and if you've not done 1,000 miles in it or 2,000 miles, we'll take you back off you. I know it's impossible to monitor that, but you know, these cars should be driven. You know, you drive yours. All our group of track friends, whatever it might be, customers of Parker's, we all use our cars in abundance, and it's not a garage queen, and that's what cars should be all about.
Well, it is a term. I mean, the garage queen term that we've heard. I mean, take the Romans example now. You know, the 4 litre that's for sale at Romans. Hopefully, it's still for sale when this video goes out. But at £475,000 with 286 miles on the clock, that car, if it is used, then it becomes a problem because its value will suffer. So that puts off a purchaser. Now that car has, I think, been for sale before. I have seen it for sale before. It's for sale again. If people get these cars, very desirable cars, and they never actually do use them, and then they put them for sale in X number of years' time, it's going to be another example just like this one, where it can't really be purchased because you only lose money.
I think recently, one of the Hartley sales pitches has recently advertised a delivery mileage F1 McLaren that was found in an apartment block in, I think it was Japan. And that car demanded a huge value over list price because it's never been used. So maybe people are going to look at the 4 litre advertised at Romans or at Franklin's and say that could be the next 4 litre.
I'm going to look at that Franklin's car. If I could afford it, I might be making a phone call. But yeah, no, it's but just generally speaking around the car market, obviously not necessarily GT, but maybe just like Ferrari or Lamborghini or any sort of like sports car marque. I mean, the values do seem to have suffered a great deal in the last few months. And what do you think the reason for that is?
I feel that a lot of businesses are struggling at the moment due to what's happened over the last 8 to 12 months. Car prices have actually since March have actually gone up. The run-of-the-mill cars have raised in price. The cap valuation guide that motor dealers use has probably increased by 15%, maybe 20% really? Over the last 8 months.
So the bread and butter market's on the way up.
It is, but it's only because new vehicles haven't been able to be supplied. Yeah. So which means that people have to move to used cars, so prices have gone up. As motor dealers back in March were petrified because they thought that the values would crash through the floor. So there was panic buying, panic selling, everyone's getting rid of the cars. Then all of a sudden, the marketplace has opened up again and sales have absolutely boomed. Mm. Now then, you say that prices over the last few months have decreased. They have, but only of vehicles from £90,000 to £100,000 and upwards. Right. Because that marketplace is such a small proportion of what's after cars at that level. Correct, correct. And you know, a lot of people have got bounce back loans. A lot of people have got
cash has come into the economy.
Correct,
through all this
and people are spending it on cars, beautiful cars. Exactly. And you know, if they can buy a car and run it for 2 years and get most of the money back, you know, the enjoyment factor. And a lot of people have not had the enjoyment of any fun over the last 12 months. You've not been able to go out, you can't do this, you can't go on holiday. So, you know, they buy a nice car and they enjoy it.
Well, there we go. Well, no, I think that's been very, very interesting. Hopefully our viewers have enjoyed today's chat here with Myles. The story around the 4 litre, the other car, the GT2 RS, which will feature on the channel in time. Other cars he's owned, I mean, that Carrera GT, I mean, that's such a fabulous, fabulous car. If you could maybe just finish up, tell us if you could have another brand other than Porsche, which would you own? If Porsche obviously stands out as the brand of choice, but would you have another brand that you sort of second place, close second, or?
I don't think I could have a Lamborghini or a Ferrari. I'm not that type of person. I like to be a little bit. How can you be under the radar when you drive around in a red car that screams, "Look at me," and I'm a fool? But I've always been into Porsche. I love the brand. You know, when I first started back in 1996, it was the car I aspired to get. Yeah. In 2011, the 4 litre came out. I said instantly, I'm having one of those. And, you know, I've worked tirelessly for the last 9 years in order to get that car. And fortunately, I've got one. And I love it. I really do.
Do you ever sell that car, Myles? Whatever you do.
Another brand. I couldn't tell you another brand, David. I really couldn't. I'd love a Bugatti, or I'd love something, you know. The other car that I'd love to own is an Alfa 8C. I don't know why. I feel that it's a little bit more under the radar than a Ferrari, even though it's got a Ferrari engine in it. It's just something totally different. I have no excuse. I have no reason why I want that car. I just do. Right.
Okay. Well, there we go. Well, hopefully.
So if David's customers have got one, I'd have an interest, whichever camera you're at.
There we go. There we go. No, it's been fascinating to just chew the fat. Hopefully we'll do another episode like this. Maybe have a little bit of a watch element to it. As you know, I like my watches as well as my cars, you know, in the future. But it's been fabulous to chat with Myles today. Thanks again for letting me to drive the 4 litre those few weeks ago there at Rubblehead. It's actually one of the best days of my life, really. Just absolutely sensational. We just can't thank you enough. Plenty more ahead on Drive Adventure. We've got some great cars coming up on the channel. Stay tuned, and thanks very much for watching today's video. And I'll see you next time.
See you next time. Out of all things that David does, that is ridiculous.